from them is of great value. I think the way in which we have learned that language is got power, and it's not just what you say, but how you say it. How that can be translated not only to the arts, but to business, to diplomacy, to governance. All of these are things that are of great value in a global world that is looking at how do we communicate across cultural lines. People talk about tribalism and conflict in Africa, but most often when you see these tribal conflicts, there's really economic imperatives that are underlying them. And oftentimes you've got external powers that are fueling the flames to get what they want, as well as internal powers that are selfishly looking towards their own self-interest as opposed to the interest of the society. But when you go back to my hometown, I mean, we could sit here with three of us in the room. I speak to you in your language. You speak to her in her language. She speaks to me in my language, just out of courtesy. You want to talk to me about tribal conflict? How many countries in the world can you go to where people will sit down and have a conversation in three tongues just to be polite to one another? Because they each obviously speak each other's. They could have picked one. I don't buy the idea that Africa is a basket case. I believe that Africa is a wealth of resource that the world can look to if Africans create an opportunity for the world to perceive the value in those resources.
So why do you think it is that, I mean, since Africa is predominantly young people, why do you think it is that these young African people don't participate in a more meaningful way towards building the society at home and in the diaspora?
Well, I think they face the same struggle that young people around the world face, which is how. You know, I want to make a difference. I want to do something great. I want to make a change. How? How do I do it? What do I do? They are all trying to figure it out. And the problem on the continent right now is some of the infrastructure for communicating, for educating people, for gaining access to information is not as robust as it should be. So I know kids who are spending time at the internet cafes. I mean, in Ghana, internet cafes in Accra, it's easier to find a cafe in Accra than it is in Manhattan. And it's kind of ironic. They're everywhere. But it's also because many people don't have access in their homes, right?
Yeah.
And so people are trying desperately to get information and to get access, and they're always online, and they're trying to plug things out or plug themselves into different networks. But the problem is, when you're paying by the hour, how much can you really do? How much time can you spend learning to program? You know, what can you do besides instant messaging here and there and sending some emails and things like that, right? So I feel like the challenge facing a lot of our young people is access to information on how they can make a difference in their own community. I remember going to the TED conference in Arusha last year in Tanzania, and there was a young man who was brought in from, I believe, I think Malawi. I forget, but I believe he was from Malawi. And he had gotten this book about windmills, and he was living in a village where they did not have electricity. And this kid read this book, and he said, I'm going to build a windmill. And he went out and he built it. And he put he created electricity in his house, the first home in the village to get electricity. That's just indigenous ingenuity, homegrown talent. And now he's being supported and financed to learn more and to study and figuring out a model for how to build more and the bigger windmills to support electricity in the rest of his village. I mean, there's so much brilliance. And I would also say to your question, I know a lot of young Africans who are out there being engaged. And if you look at an organization like Taking It Global, I think I think the largest group of people on Taking It Global, the last time I checked, were like from the U.S. or North America. The second largest were from Africa. Before Europe, Africans were all over the thing. We are out there hustling and trying and fighting to make our way. And I believe that in the next 5 years, you're going to start to see some of those fruits bounce up. You're going to see Africans in powerful positions and young Africans doing incredible things worldwide. And over the course of the next 10 years, we have the opportunity to really start bringing our interests globally to the table and having very strong arguments for what we need as opposed to just what we can get. But I think that we have to give our youth more access, not only to learn what they can do, but also to have their voices heard so that people can see what they are already doing.
And what about these folks who are already in the diaspora? What are your impressions on that? Like, you know, best educated group of people are these us African immigrants. Are we doing enough? Are we doing too little, too much?
Well, I think that you have really the evolution of what a friend of mine coined as the Afropolitan community. And that is those of us who have grown up in multiple countries and multiple languages, and all of us are not African per se. Some are Caribbean descent, some are African American, but these are people who, live in New York but speak with a London affect and love to chop fufu when they go home to their family in Lagos,
Yeah.
or eat some eba. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like that Afropolitan clique is just now coming to know itself. I think our parents' generation came out to study, and many of them got drawn into the Western lifestyle, and it becomes very difficult to, develop debts in dollars and go home to pay them in cedis or in naira, right?
Yeah.
So they wind up having stayed and seeing their children through school and such. But I think for our generation, who are now coming up and have finished school and have gotten graduate degrees or are pursuing degrees or are in the professional world now, it's time for us to step up. And many of us have been refining our skills and our chops, but we need to start applying them to what can be done for our people back home and for ourselves in the diaspora. I think there's nothing wrong with having the Africans living in the diaspora, living in the West, or even, I'm not one of those who ascribes that we must marry someone from your own village and all of this stuff. You wind up with somebody that you met who's wonderful where you are, that's fine. But remember where you come from. Build a life, build a relationship with your work, with your spouse, with your dreams that enables you to come home, that enables you to start projects at home, that enables you to make investments at home, that enables you to launch ventures at home, that enables you to be a part of the life and the upliftment of your society, right?
Yep.
It's not as hard as people think. I'm not saying that everyone need to drop all your thing, quit your job at Goldman Sachs, and move back to Nairobi. I'm saying that you can commit to spending a certain amount of time in Nairobi. If your business is finance, learning what are the financial systems at home, where are the opportunities, where are the weaknesses, how could it be possible to maybe repatriate some capital to either launch or finance a venture that could take advantage of certain weaknesses in the marketplace, that can make you money, that can be good for you personally, but that can also reinforce and support your community by leveraging the expertise that you've developed outside. That is what I think that we of the diaspora need to be doing, to getting more connected. And I don't feel bad. I think that now is the time to do it. We've been trained. We've been learning. Let's start putting it into action.
So that folks can get inspired, talk about some of the stuff that you're doing, to help, back in Accra as well.
So